Alright, what's going on guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Vraska Scheming Gorgon Planeswalker deck. As always, do note that this is not intended to be a GP winning competitive deck. If you want that, consider checking out the latest tournament results. What we'll be doing is upgrading this deck card by card, sticking to this deck's themes, and getting as much power out of it as we can. And we'll be doing it on a budget, as we will not exceed the deck's original MSRP price with our upgrades. Let's get started. So what does the Vraska Scheming Gorgon deck do? Well, it's a tribal vampire deck. It uses cards like Vicious Conquistador, Legion Lieutenant, and Champion of Dusk to go on the offensive with some bloodthirsty bloodsuckers. Right. Basically, yeah, tribal vampires, you get it. The unique cards that come with this deck, the cards you can only get if you buy this deck, are Vraska, along with Vraska's Conquistador and Vraska's Scorn. These aren't great, but I suppose they aren't completely terrible either. I mean, hey, Vraska can potentially kill multiple creatures, so that's not the worst. Anyway, let's get right into the upgrades, because we have some terrible cards that need to be pulled out of this thing to make it playable. I'm looking at you, Queen's Bay Soldier, Skyblade of the Legion, and Gilded Sentinel. Yeah, why Gilded Sentinel? Oh man, come on. Anyway, let's start by taking out 2 Queen's Bay Soldiers for 2 Legion Lieutenants. I mean, is there anything to talk about here? A 2-mana 2/2 that does nothing, or a 2-mana 2/2 that pumps all of our vampires in a vampire deck? Yeah, the Lieutenant is a higher rank than a Soldier for a reason, because it's better, clearly. Next up, we're going to take out a Paladin of Atonement for another Legion Lieutenant. I mean, the Paladin is interesting in a janky sort of way, using damage you take to pump itself up, and then letting you gain some of it back when it dies. I mean, it's an interesting ability for sure. It's just a little slow, a little unreliable. I'd much rather just slam a Lieutenant in play, pump up my entire army, and just, go swinging at my opponent's face. So Legion Lieutenant is just going to work better in pretty much every situation imaginable. So we'll go with that. Next up, we're going to take to the skies and take out 2 Skyblade Legions in favor of 2 Sky Marcher Aspirants. The Skyblade Legion is kind of terrible. 2 mana to get 1 power on the battlefield just doesn't impress me. The Aspirant is aggressive. It's going to punish the opponent hard if they don't have anything on the battlefield in the first couple turns. And late game, it can beat down if it has flying and if it's getting pumped up by a Lieutenant, for example. So yeah, it can dish out the beats pretty heavily in the late game and, close out a game pretty quickly for you. We're also going to take out 2 Famished Paladins for 2 more Sky Marcher Aspirants. The Famished Paladin is another kind of fun, janky card. This deck seems to have a lot of that, but even though it's a pretty big creature, a 2-mana 3/3, it just isn't reliable and could get stuck in the tapped position, which is not what we want. As fun as the card is, the Aspirants are just a bit more consistent and can potentially win the game for us in the late game, so let's go with those. Next up, we're going to take out 4 copies of Vampire Champion and replace them with 4 copies of Call to the Feast. The Champion is terrible. A 4-mana 3/3 is not what we want to be doing in an aggressive tribal deck. And I don't even care if it has Death Touch. It's clunky, it's slow, it's not big enough for 4 mana. Call to the Feast is similar because it puts 3 power on the battlefield for 4 mana, but they have lifelink, and that power is going to double for each Legion Lieutenant we have on the battlefield. Like if we have a Vampire Champion with a Legion Lieutenant, it's a 4/4. If we have the 3 tokens, then we've got 6 power on the battlefield. So it escalates, and that's what you want in a tribal deck. That's like kind of key in a tribal deck, is that you want more of your tribe in play. So putting 3 1/1 tokens is a lot better than 1 3/3 for 4 mana. Next up, we're taking out 2 Gilded Sentinels, because why the heck are Gilded Sentinels in a tribal vampire deck? Yeah, we're going to take those out and we're going to replace them with Adonto Vanguard. The Vanguard is interesting. It's basically a 3 power creature because we always want to be attacking with it. and we can pay 4 life to rescue it from damage or from a removal spell. 4 life is a lot, don't get me wrong. We can't just go spending 4 life willy-nilly because we'll be dead in no time. But the good thing about it is you'd be surprised how cautious the opponent will become when they know you can rescue it at any time. It starts feeling like it's kind of unblockable, and that allows us to attack relentlessly with it. It's actually kind of nice. I like it. Next, we're going to take out 3 Vraska's Conquistador and replace them with Dusk Legion Zealots. Now, I must say the Conquistador is kind of amazing if we have Vraska in play. A 2 mana 2/1 that's draining our opponent for 2 life every single time it attacks is actually kind of spicy. I really like the idea of it. Unfortunately, it's only active when Vraska is in play, and the rest of the time it's strictly worse than Grizzly Bear. I mean, yay for Grizzly Bears. Yeah, the benefit of the Zealot, on the other hand, is it allows us to dig through our deck. We toss it into play, we draw a card, we get a vampire. I mean, it's not that impressive just because it's a 2 mana 1/1, but the way you look at it is it's a free vampire, right? 2 mana, you get a vampire in play, you get to trigger all kinds of vampire stuff. It's going to get pumped by vampires, but it replaces itself because you draw a card, so there's no loss. It's like 2 mana, vampire, give me another card, it's fine. Next up, we're going to take out 2 Inspiring Clerics and replace them with Martyr of Dusk. Inspiring Cleric worked well with the 2 Paladins we saw earlier, but now it's just kind of clunky. It's small for its cost, and it just gains us a little bit of life, so it's not super impressive. Martyr of Dusk, on the other hand, allows us to be aggressive, and much like Adanto Vanguard, we can attack freely with it because people aren't going to want to block it if they know we're just going to get a token out of it anyway. Aggression is important in a tribal deck, and this allows us to do it way better than the Cleric, that's for sure. Next, we're going to take out the Exultant Sky Marcher for another one of these Martyr of Dusk. For much the same reason, it's just faster. The issue with the Sky Marcher is it costs double white mana, which might not be reliable on turn 3. It also has 2 power for 3 mana, so even with the evasion, it's kind of meh. Martyr of Dusk is going to be much more consistent. It's going to put pressure on the opponent much faster. You know, it trades well. Opponents don't want to hit it with a removal spell, so you know, we're going to go with that. Next up, we're going to take out the 1 Deathless Ancient for 1 final copy of Martyr of Dusk. We don't want to be clogging up our hand with 6 mana creatures. And even though the graveyard recursion is really nice, the card overall is super clunky. A 6 mana 4/4 is slow, and we have to tap a ton of creatures to get it back. I mean, don't get me wrong, in some situations where the game is going super long against a control deck, that graveyard recursion mechanic could definitely be a game-winning ability, for sure. But it's just, most of the time, it's just bad. It's almost always bad. And honestly, you won't find yourself in those situations where the game is going long against a control deck if you play faster. So, let's play faster with Martyr of Dusk, so we can just kill the control player before they can stabilize, and then we don't have to worry about Deathless Ancient's recursion ability. Moving on to some spells, I want to take out 2 Moments of Triumph and replace them with Moments of Craving. I just like that we can kill creatures. Killing creatures is a good thing, and the cravings are going to be a lot more useful in way more scenarios than the triumphs will be. It can even account for more damage to the opponent if we can, you know, take out the opponent's last blocker and then go attacking. The craving is just better all around. The last card I want to take out is Bright Reprisal, and I want to replace it with Cast Out. The Reprisal is expensive and narrow, only allowing us to target creatures and only when they are attacking. Cast Out can target any non-land permanent at any time, and it can also be cycled away for another card if you don't need it. So yeah, having a couple of these wouldn't hurt, but for now we're going to just replace the Reprisal for the Cast Out because it's a whole lot better in almost every scenario. And that's it, guys. That's the deck. If you want to dump a little bit more money into the thing, a couple things to consider are Maverick Fane, Legion's Landing, and Sanctum Seeker. All of these are pretty good. Sanctum Seeker in particular can account for a ton of damage. That thing can win games and create some pretty massive swings, so that thing's pretty good. And all 3 of these actually work together fairly well, because Maverick and the Landing pump out tokens, which in turn drain your opponent's health with Sanctum Seeker. So yeah, these are pretty good. They're also just a little bit too expensive for us. I mean, they're not super expensive. These are all like a couple dollars each USD. So this isn't like going obscenely expensive here. They're just a little bit too expensive for our extremely small budget, but definitely something to consider. Sanctum Seeker in particular is pretty crazy. And another thing to consider is improving the mana base with dual lands and unclaimed territory. Though with our budget, again, we can't quite fit these into the deck list, but it'll definitely smooth out your mana and you'll get color screwed less often if your mana base is a little bit more complex. Anyway, that's it guys. For the price you paid for the original deck, you can upgrade it to this, and it is, without question, significantly more powerful than what comes out of the box. While you won't be winning a Grand Prix with this thing, if you're playing the deck straight out of the box, then this should definitely help you win a lot more games. So there you go guys, Tribal Vampires on a budget, upgraded from the Vraska Planeswalker deck. And if you are curious, I'm going to add links to some competitive vampire decks in the description. While they haven't fared as well as Merfolk on the competitive scene, if you want to see what some of the best performing vampire decks look like in Standard, then by all means check out the description. You should see some vampire decks that have top 8'd some fairly competitive tournaments. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.